Austin, how have you doing?
Oh, hello Will.
Hello.
I was just figuring out how to code bee sniffing. I thought, you know, it might help if I came out into the garden and became one with the bees.
Why don't we do it on the patio?
Yeah, alright. Better
Let's go.
idea.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go retro. Okay, we're going to work on the next part of our backlog, Will. And I thought we'd come outside and get some fresh air. Because you don't want to spend too much time sat at the computer on a lovely day like today. So, do you remember what the next part of the backlog was?
Make the bee move.
Yeah, bee sniff and move bee were our next two items. So, I thought we could use the patio. Got a camera mounted up on the roof. And of course the patio is really just a bunch of squares, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can pretend that the patio is the screen RAM memory on the VIC-20. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we can use this to work out what our code needs to do. Sound good? So, let's imagine that you are our little bee. Would you like to make a buzzing noise? Very nice. So, if you look at the screen RAM around you, Will, what do you notice about it? How many squares have you got surrounding you?
8.
8 squares. And do you know which direction is north? That is really north in real life, actually. So, and in fact, if we imagine that over here where this little tree is screen RAM position 7680. That's the beginning of our bees world. You're right. That's the beginning of our bees world. And let's imagine these little potted plants are our flowers. Okay? So, you're facing north. In order to make the bee sniff, what do we need to do?
Make it peek at each of these squares.
Funny you should say that, because the command that we'll use when we code this is peek. So if you remember last episode, we used poke a lot. At this episode, we're going to use the peek command, which lets you check the value of a memory location. So can you remember what the number was for our flower, to represent our flower?
88.
Will? 88, good memory. So if you check the surrounding 8 squares and you find an 88,
You go towards it.
yeah, that's the area we need to go. So if you think about it, we're going to need to do a few things. Can you think of one of the things we're going to do to make this sniff happen?
Peek
Yeah.
at all of these squares.
Yeah. So do you remember last time we set up a loop?
Yeah.
Do you remember how the loop went? You remember that? 4 and next. So how many times do we need to go around the loop?
8.
Yes, perfect. We need to check round for the 8 directions of the compass. So we're going to have north as 0, and then we're going to have northeast as 1. We'll have east as 2. We'll have southeast as 3. We'll have south as 4. Southwest as 5. West as 6. Northwest as 7. And that brings us back to 0. So what we'll do is set up something called an array, and we'll store some values in the array as well. So let's imagine that you're the bee, and you need to sniff around the surrounding 8 cells. And can you find a flower in any of the surrounding 8 cells right now? Okay, so we generate a random direction to head in. What have you? 4?
2, 3, 4.
Okay, so you head in that direction. Okay. Then we sniff again.
Nothing.
Nothing in the surrounding 8 cells, so we go random again.
7. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. Oh, this is a bit more interesting. So, is there anything in the surrounding 8 cells?
Yes.
What is it? It's a flower.
88 flower.
An 88, you found an 88. So, then you move in that direction. Now, can you remember what you said your code was going to do?
It was gonna get the pollen from the flower and go back to life.
Yep, so you're going to get pollen points, do you remember?
Boop.
Okay, so having done that, I think we've modelled in the real world how you can get your bee to sniff. Yes. Okay, well, here we are, episode 3 of our mission to create virtual life on the VIC-20. Before we progress, we've obviously already been outside and done our real life modelling. Yeah, but we're going to do some more design in this week's episode. But just quickly, a tidy up from episode 2, because I made some small changes to the code just to make it tidy up. Well, I said I would, and I said I'd tell you what I'd do. So this is what we did. So if you remember, do you remember we created our glossary? Yeah, so if you flick onto Excel real quick, you remember this, right? So this was our glossary, and in here we've listed all the variables that we're using, what type they are they numbers, are they text, and we're also saying what they do and what their initial value is. So for example, if you recall, we had HV, which is where our Hive screen RAM position is, and it's 7680, that's the start of the screen RAM. So top left corner of the screen, that's where the Hive lives. And then we've got our Hive icon and our various other values that we need to store. And if we do this, then if we get confused over which variable does which, we can always refer back to the glossary. So it's just a good tidy way of being organised. And the scope here, well, that just means, is it a variable that's used everywhere within the program, the B simulator program, or is it just used within the subroutine that it is created within? I think I added some code to check for errors. So if you try and draw the screen somewhere silly on the screen, the Hive for example, try and draw it off the screen, it won't crash the program, it will just tell you there's an error and return back safely without crashing things, which is always a good habit to get into. And then the other thing I did was just added a little bit of code at the end, just to wait for you to press any key so that you can see what you've drawn on the screen, all your flowers. And that's it. So our next mission, let's go to our backlog. Let's see how far we've got. So last episode we managed to complete 2 tasks. We did draw the world and we added the icons. Yay! So what's the next task on the list?
Bee, sniff flowers and move the bee.
That's our target for today. Okay, so we've already been outside and kind of before you had your haircut. So we're going to have a continuity problem now because, you know, you had long hair in that bit of the video and now you've got short hair and so have I. What's going on there? Like you can tell with my hair, it's always the same. Lack of hair. Anyway, doesn't matter. So that's our target. Sniff the flowers and move the bee. So we need to step by step. What's the process going to be?
So wait, is the bee already at where you need to?
I don't know. You tell me. It's your program.
Yeah. Bee behind.
Move to the flower. That should be okay. No, I think that's pretty good.
2.
Yeah, pretty good.
Ooh,
Ooh, a butterfly. We're getting zoomed by not a bee, a butterfly. Great. Right. Should we take a little break, another drink, and then get coding?
Let's do it.
So, time for that well-earned tea, I think. And during this episode's nostalgia break, I want to talk a little bit about consoles and early consoles. I remember the first one that we got, I think this was before I had my VIC-20, was the Binatone console. which was an orange and black beast, and it only played things like Pong, as far as I recall. Another one that very fond memories of is the Philips video pack, which I played an awful lot of at a friend of mine's, because he owned one, and I've got a very distinct memory of the very hot July day in 1984 when it was Live Aid, and we spent the entire morning playing the Pac-Man clone on the Philips video pack, and we were crazy about the Pac-Man cartoon that was on as part of the Roland Rat show in the morning, and then we played Pac-Man all afternoon, and then we watched all morning, and then we watched Live Aid in the afternoon, which was an amazing event. And yeah, really vividly remember watching all of that and playing on that video pack at my friend Richard's house back in the day. So yeah, do leave us in the comments your memories of those consoles. If you had that old orange Binatone in particular, I would love to hear your memories of that. I think it had light guns, as I recall. They're probably going for crazy money on eBay these days, just like everything else. But yeah, I guess we better get back to the coding. Yeah, so first step on our flowchart was to set up the position of the B, or calculate the position of the B. And as we're just starting out on this portion of the code, from lines 20 to 48 is where we stored all our initial values in the main driver code for the program. And we probably need to put in our B position in here and then add it to our variable glossary as well. So we'll do a line. I think this will need to go somewhere. If you put it there, what's going to happen if you put it there?
It'll go 90.
Yeah, but then what? It's never going to get to that code. Why is it never going to get to that code? What does line 80 say?
End.
Right.
So,
so there is no line 90. And actually, if you put it there, it's no good there either, because look, that's the end of your program. You're putting it at the end. Nothing. It will never happen. Yeah, it will never happen. So you need to put in, I think, first of all, a line between 48 and 50. In fact, we could do with a magic renumber. Okay, so somewhere, line 85. Let's create a new line there, line 85. And let's store our B position in a new variable.
So, BP.
Sounds good to me.
BP.
So remember, we're using let. Yeah.
B.
Yeah. Now, do you remember where he's going to start?
6, 8.
Yeah. So that's where he's going to start off. Okay, then we go back to B movie.
Huh.
There we go. Okay. So we've initially set the position of our B. So what was the next step on the flowchart?
Peek at cell in front of.
Yep. How many times do we need to sniff?
8.
Yeah. So we need a loop with 8 steps. Do you remember how we do that?
So
4 and next.
Oh yeah, 4.
Yeah. And then the name of a variable.
Oh yeah.
So you can use something that's not already used.
BS.
Yeah. BS.
BSNF.
BSNF. Yeah. Equals. And then you do 1, 2.
8.
Yeah, but you have to put in the letters. 2. 8. Yeah, that's right. Well, BS equals 1 to 8. So that's setting us a loop that's going to go around 8 times.
We're going to have to add the new things to the glossary.
We will have to add our new things to the glossary. Do you want to do that now? While you're thinking of it? Yeah. Okay.
And does this need anything?
Not really. No. Return it. It's 1 to 7. Okay. So the next step on the flowchart was peek. Peek at the value in front of us. So this is where it gets a little tricky, because if you remember, we go back to our screen RAM map. Our B is going to start at 7681. Okay. Now we know that the cell, he hasn't got a cell in front of him.
Yeah.
Because
he doesn't have one.
because he's in the top row.
And he can't sniff the hive either.
You can't. There's no point in sniffing the hive either. Very true. Yeah.
So he has 4 to sniff instead.
He has
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. He does. How do we code for that? Because this code's going to run wherever he is on the screen. So we need to calculate which row and which column he's in with a bit of maths.
Oh, I don't like that.
That's fine. It's not too difficult. So each row on the screen is made up of 21. Well, it's actually 22 cells.
Yeah.
And each column is made up of 23 cells. So what we need to work out is which row and column our B is in. So can you think of a way that we can do that? So it's a bit of tricky maths we need to do. So if we're in cell 7681, if we're anywhere between row 768, cell 7681, and here, we know we're in
that top one.
We're in that. So what we can do is divide the position that we're in by 22. Let's say 7702 minus 7680 equals 22. We divide that by 22.
What?
We get 1. So the pattern is then
Deja vu. Why do I remember?
7681 minus 7680 equals 1. Divide that by 22. We get a number that's less than 0.
0.0.
So what we need to do is do an int of that number, and we'd get 0. And that would tell us that we're in row 0. Yeah? Does our plan then work for, let's say, 7793? 7793 minus 7680. Divide that by 22, and we take the integer of it,
5.
row 5. Is that right?
2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What were we? What did we choose?
7793. So we need to add 1 to it, and then we get it right.
Add 1, and then we get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us 793. Yeah. With 793. And row 5. So 5. The 10. With that, so 793. Let's work out the row and column. So we work out the row first. So let's put our 2 formulas in the code so that we haven't got to keep flipping back to the one note. Yep. Yep. Excellent. So we've got a row and column. So now we can do our checks. So this is where we are. This is our big X. That's where we are. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So this one is... Well, that's that, and that's going to be useful. So let's grab that. Let's correct that there. So what we'll do is we'll code in that calculation and make our B sniff. But let's take another break. Hi, we're only a small YouTube channel, but we'd really appreciate your support. So if you want to show some love for what we're doing here, trying to inspire the next generation of young innovators, then head on over to winterfam.co.uk, links in the description. Pick yourself up a free short story by clicking on the download link. That'll help us stay in touch. And maybe you want to pick up a novel or two from Amazon. These are all stories for children from 9 to 12, and they're aimed at inspiring them to get into science and technology through amazing sci-fi adventures. Imagine discovering the secrets of Father Christmas and the technology behind it. Or imagine exploring the universe from the sofa using virtual reality and quantum technology. It all goes on with the Winter family. So hopefully we'll see you over there. Thanks very much for watching the video this far, and let's get back to the hard work of bee simulation on a VIC-20.
We're back, and yesterday it was sunny, and today it is raining, which you can probably hear. But it's actually cooling us down quite nicely, right?
I'm too bad, I've got a blanket.
He's got a blanket on. Yes. So we've gone from 30 degrees to, I don't know, what is it out there right now?
Minus
Hey, let's ask Windows. Look, it's 23 degrees.
Oh, it's 23 degrees.
23 degrees. So we've dropped at least 7 degrees. And the thunder's gone. But it's just raining. So, an ideal time to press on. So let's take a look at the next part of our coding adventure. Let's go to OneNote. So, today we will cover a bit of a recap of my tidying up that we did since the last session. Okay. And then we will concentrate on bee sniffing, which is always a nice thing to concentrate on. And in order to do that, we're going to need to learn a few things. We're going to need to learn about things called arrays. Not rays of sunshine, which we're severely lacking. Arrays of memory locations that we can set aside as variables to hold numbers or letters or strings or whatever we want. Okay? But we'll create some arrays. And to create some arrays, we'll need to learn how to use the dim statement in good old VIC-20 BASIC. Okay? We will also need to learn the read statement. We'll have to learn to read so that we can write code now. So the read statement will help us to load values into our array. So if you remember yesterday, we were working on the points of the compass. So we will put the points of the compass values that we need into our array. And then we'll use the peek statement, which we've talked about often, to peek inside memory locations and sniff for flowers and pollen. Okay? So let's get going. Let's head over to PRG Studio. And I will just walk you through the tidying up that I've done. So if you go to the main file, so first of all in here you'll notice what I've done is I had created some more global variables. If you look at line 100 to line 118, you can see some number variables that I've created, some integers. Can you fathom a guess, Will, oh mighty one, as to what they might refer to?
FC, LR and LC.
Yeah. And what values are we putting into LC, for example?
0, 23, 21. So it's the columns and rows.
Yes.
Like
But which particular columns and rows? Can you think?
the corners and
Yes.
the edges. And
Bang on, correct. So first row 0, first column 0, last row 23, last column 21. What I've done is I've moved the code that we wrote yesterday to calculate the position of the V in terms of rows and column in the screen RAM into its own subroutine. So we can call that whenever we want to update the position of the B and give us the current row and column of the B. Okay? Let's go to the glossary tab over here, sir. Oh, excellent. I've also decided, I thought it would be a better idea if our row and column, thank you, good correction, we're on the ball today. If our row and column integer variables were global, and then we can use them from anywhere we like. Okay, so that's what an update of what I've been doing while you've been upstairs playing Rust earlier this afternoon. And how did you get on with Rust?
Luke got some P1 got guns.
I don't know what that means, but sounds
got
good.
guns.
You got guns. Okay. Okay. So that's that. So let's go first of all to Excel before we do any coding, and I want to show you something that I've done here. So let me just grab the mouse a second, sir, and just show you this. So if you'll recall what we were doing before we wrapped up yesterday, we were thinking about the different directions our B can move in the world on the screen round map, and we were talking about them in terms of the compass directions. So what we did is we worked out the numbers that we need to assign to each direction in order for our B to be able to move there. So if our B is at position, let's go to our screen round map. If he's at B, our B is at position 7799 here, and he wants to move north one cell to square 7777, what he needs to do is take away 23 from 7799, and he will land in 7777. Similarly, if he adds the same amount, he will end up in the cell below. He will head south. So those numbers I'm going to call offsets. They're the offset values for the compass directions. So 7777, our little calculator there tells us we're in row 4, column 9, according to our little map. Column 9, row 4. That's where we are.
6 months later.
So let's check this in our little sort of truth table down here at the bottom. So row is 12. Okay, so what we do is we look at this here and we figure out this in this column what value our row is. So it's 12, so it's greater than 0 and less than 22. So it's going to be one of these two options. And column is 17. So that is going to be, have we got an option for that? Greater than 0. Oh yeah, here. We've got an option for that. So it's one of these two. And it's this one. So that means, if we look at our numbers here, we've put a 1 where we think we can move to or sniff, and we've put a 0 where we think we can't. So for 7961, we're right in the middle, pretty much. Well, quite near the middle. We can sniff in all directions because we're not at the edge. So we can sniff in all 8 directions. So our check column says 8, okay? Because we can sniff all the way around, like this, all the way around, north, south, east, west, back to north. So if we land in cell 8176, which is here, we've mapped out that we can only sniff or move in a northerly, northeasterly, easterly, westerly or northwesterly direction, right? Because we can't go off the screen. Okay, so that seems to work, doesn't it? Seems to have figured that out. So that's going to be useful when we come to code the next piece. What we're going to need to do next is take those numbers that we figured out for our offsets, and we're going to need to put them into an array. So let me explain what an array is and what it does first of all. So if you pop back to Excel, okay, so here we are, and these are our different offsets that we've defined that we need to store. And when you've got highlighted there, that's a representation of what our array is going to look like. So in VIC-20 BASIC, what you can do is basically set up a variable which can have more than one value, because it's basically a list. Okay, so what we're going to do is set up a variable which can have 7 values, and each of those values is called a dimension on the array. So we're going to have a one-dimensional array which is going to have,
which is going to have, let me just highlight, these 7 values. And this column here will be called the index. And this will be the dimension or the value. Okay. Have you got any ideas why it might be called the index? Do you know what an index is and what an index does?
No. A list of names, subjects with references to places where they are typically found at the end of a book.
Yeah, actually, the closest definition to what we're looking for there is number 4.
Pointer or on an instrument showing a quantity, a position on
a scale. Yeah, so if you imagine our index is here, and this is our scale. This was a thermometer. If I wanted to, if the temperature was reading 23, what would my index be?
3.
Yeah, so if I want to find in my array the value -1, which index do I need to go to?
6.
Yeah, so basically an index gives you a way of, it's like a telephone book of finding a particular value in your list. Okay, that's all there is to an array. So if we go back to Commodore BASIC first, we can set up our array, and to do that we use the dim command. So let's put in a new line here. Okay, over to you. So if you just type the keyword dim, not because you're dim or anything like that, it's the command that we use to set up an array. So we can give our array variable the same sort of names we give anything in VIC-20 BASIC. So it needs to have only 2 characters or up to 2 characters for its name. If it's an array of strings, you remember characters like names or things like that, we would use the $sign to define it. But this is just numbers. So we can call this whatever we like, but this is an array of directions, really, isn't it? It's our compass directions. So we could call it whatever we want. CD sounds good. So dim CD, and then the VIC needs to know how many indexes, how many values in our array we want.
8.
Yeah, but it starts at 0, so we tell it that we want 7. Yeah, and to do that we need to put the 7 in brackets. Yep, that is it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the dim command. So what we'd normally do is not have a space between there and there. So it's just dim CD 7. So that tells the VIC to set us aside an empty array. So if I move those out, that's what we've now got. So this is going to be CD. Okay? So we've got our numbers over here, and we can call this data, because that's what it is. Each one of those. Do you know what an individual piece of data is called? It's Latin.
No.
It's a datum. Latin lessons you get on this channel as well. It's amazing, isn't it? But those data need to go into our CD array. And again, the VIC gives us an easy way of doing that through a command called read. Okay? But before you do that, you need to put those values into the program so that when we call the read command, it can go and find them. Right? So what we'll do is we'll first of all put our data in. And to do that, you use the command data. Never would have guessed it, would you? Yeah. And then basically all you have to do is that list of numbers. We read numbers, and then we use the read command to read the value into our array value.
But before we do that, we have to do an assignment. So you know that when we do let something equal something else. We do basically the same, but for the element of our array. So if we go back to our Excel, to read CD and then the index that we want to read in the brackets. So you can pop that in there. So that's CD, open the bracket, and then I. Yeah, and then you do you have a 4 and then a next, don't you? So line 399, if you press return, is going to be next I. Okay, so what that will do, sets aside the 7 parts of our list in the array, calls it CD. Then we do a loop, we go around 0 to 7 times. First time through, read CD 0. So what goes into CD of 0 from the data list?
North.
Which is?
Minus 22.
Correct, so minus 22. Next time round, it will be CD of 1.
Minus 21.
And so on and so forth. So it will list, it will load our list. Boom, nice and tidy. So it's now goes up 420. So we can do that in here. We can do go sub 420. And that will set up our compass directions. Hooray! If we now go back to our wonderful chart here, we've still not got to the point where we peek at the cell in front of us. Because it's more complicated than we thought when we were doing our...
Over.
So just before we go this month, a big thank you to the guys on the VIC20 Facebook group who helped us out a great deal with the coding this month. Everything we do here on the channel is aimed at inspiring the next generation of youngsters to achieve the impossible, or the seemingly impossible, just like the guys at SpaceX here behind me, who last night when we were filming this managed to install 29 rocket engines on that big booster 4, which is almost ready to fly. Incredible feat. And it all started with a little bit of coding on a VIC20 way back in the day. So it's amazing what you can achieve. We hope you enjoyed the video. Do stay tuned for the next episode, which will be coming soon. But for now, many thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye. Kind of final exam for episode 3. Because up to now, we've seen... Wow. Wow. 13-year-old reacts to code he wrote. Thumbnail.